Hello and welcome back to Dream Idiots. My name is Morris, and that fella who's being quiet is Bryan. And he's
Hello.
waving, he's waving in an
Waving
in an
audio
audio
format.
medium.
Right.
Each week, Bryan and I bring each other stories from history, stories from current events, stories from our own personal lives, and share them with each other and with you. We also throw in perhaps a curse word of the week. Almost every episode, we have a curse word of the week, but we have every now and then we'll do something special. We will have a special guest, and I will introduce that guest in a moment. Bryan, where can they find us?
You can check us out as always at dreamidiots.com. Check out the whole back catalog. We have some merchandise there as well, and a contact form. If you want to drop us a line, you can do so at dreamidiotspodcast at gmail. Send us a story idea, send us a curse word, just say hey. We're on Facebook and Instagram at Dream Idiots. And we appreciate you hanging in there with us. Third new episode in a row after our little hiatus, and I think we'll be new and good through the end of the year. I hope, pending
Oh, me too.
pending
Pending.
disease and disaster.
Oh, don't say that. I mentioned we have a special guest this episode. Every now and then we like to have a guest genius on, someone who's specifically accrued in accrued knowledge in a field that Bryan and I are perhaps unfamiliar with. We're very happy to have with us from the Fabric of Folklore podcast, Vanessa, who is just around the corner from Bryan. But we are thanks for coming on. What is your podcast about? What do you do with your episodes?
Thanks so much for having me. Yeah, my podcast, Fabric of Folklore, is a interview podcast where I bring on guests, historians, folklorists, which is a real word. It was not a word I was familiar with prior to my starting
It's
my
not
podcast.
it's not folklorian. It should be, but
And I was a folklorist.
yeah.
Yeah. I bring on folk musicians, storytellers, people who study storytelling, and just pick their brains about all avenues of folklore, which really encompasses so much more than I really understood it to be when I first started my podcast. Originally, I thought folklore was just folk tales, but folklore is this umbrella term that encompasses basically anything that is ground up. It's of the people. So
Hmm.
we usually say oral tales, but
Mhm.
also it can be folk art, right? There's also folk art which is not oral, but it's transmitted by people, and it's viral. Before viral was meant, online, uh,
Before
things
TikTok, right?
would catch fire. Things would
Right.
catch fire via like your neighbor, and people would, start telling stories, or they would start sharing art, and people would just take it up on their own, and it just would spread naturally rather than a top-down approach where it's like the government or an organization or a business is telling people that they have to do something. So
Hmm.
it's naturally spread information.
Very cool. It's organic. It's
It's very
true.
organic, yeah.
It's true mimesis. Getting back to memes, which have been reduced to a picture with a
Huh.
caption, but this whole idea of mimetic properties of storytelling that are passed down. It's very cool.
Yeah.
And so the podcast itself, I assume, is on most every platform, and I think you're on
Yes.
YouTube as well.
I'm also on YouTube as well.
Okay.
Yeah, it's mostly I find that mostly people listen to the full episodes on audio, but they like to find like short clips
Mm.
on
Mhm.
YouTube.
Okay. Yeah, weirdly, we have a couple, fairly avid, I say listeners, but actually, I guess viewers who really like watching us on YouTube instead. Like, I can't imagine why watching us with headphones on is interesting, but you never know.
Headphones and glasses,
Right,
Bryan.
right. Middle-aged
That-
men
I
in
think it's
glasses. Yeah, riveting.
I think it's mostly just laziness. You're used to one platform and you just stick to it. You
Oh,
know
that
what
could
I
be.
mean? Like it's
Right.
hard to switch between platforms.
Mhm. We'll
Just
take it.
stick with what you
Viewers,
know.
viewers, listeners,
Right.
we'll take it.
Come on down. Right. So when I originally had the idea a few months ago of having you on, I mean I was thinking about folklore and to the point you were just making, I didn't really realize. I mean, I actually looked up like a dictionary definition of the word because I'd been using the word, but then I realized I didn't quite know what it meant and didn't
Hmm.
fully understand that it's as broad as it is. I was thinking of a much more sort of narrow definition of it. But in my mind, it is more oral, but it's also somewhere between history and fiction. It's there's always an aspect, at least in my mind, of kind of the fish tale, the tall tale, the story that has been exaggerated and utilized in certain ways. It may have a kernel of truth, but it's been warped over time. Is that
Yeah.
accurate in your mind?
Yes.
Okay.
And so there's a term that I recently learned and I really like it is mythic memory. And so
Hmm.
Noah's Ark is an example of that. Noah's Ark is obviously found in the Bible, but it is found in cultures around the world and lots of different forms. It's not all someone builds a boat and saves animals, but there is a large flood that
Hmm.
occurs across cultures. And so basically the idea behind mythic memory is that there is truth. It might not be the full truth, but there is definitely elements of truth to
Huh.
many of these stories.
Hmm.
Gotcha,
Yeah, it
gotcha.
means
It's
be super interesting. Go ahead, Morris. Go ahead.
no, I was saying I'm hearing a lot of Jan Harold Brunvan's urban legends work and what you're talking about how it tells a truth from not necessarily a good truth sometimes, but it tells a truth and it's passed on from person to person
Hmm.
Hmm.
over the ages. Be it a college dorm room or a friend of a friend story kind of thing. So
Well, no,
Hmm.
all the tales of cryptids. I mean, there's like 100 different versions
mhm.
of Bigfoot that to kind of evolve over time. So the story I want to sort of talk you through. Some of this Morris will I think will recognize, but I wanted to sort of walk you through some of this and just sort of see what you thought and get your reaction to it from sort of a I guess a folklorist perspective.
Okay.
So have you ever heard of a place in New Mexico called Ghost Ranch?
No, I haven't.
Okay. So, Ghost Ranch, it is deep in the heart of Georgia O'Keeffe country. If you've ever seen any of her paintings where there's landscapes, which is
Hmm.
most of them,
Most of them, yeah.
uh, this is where she painted most of those. Some of her work was in Texas and elsewhere, but 90% of them is in north central New Mexico. So this part of the state is painted desert, but there's also grasslands nearby. But if you start driving or hiking further north, up above sort of 7,000 feet or so, you get into pine forest. The northern border of Ghost Ranch is actually the Kit Carson National Forest. And the Continental Divide Trail actually cuts right through Ghost Ranch as well. So if you had a mind to and the desire and ability, if you found yourself at Ghost Ranch, you could hop on a trail and walk all the way to Canada. It would take you a while. So O'Keefe started visiting north central Mexico literally about 100 years ago. She started visiting the area in the 1920s. By the 1930s, she was living in the area, I think more or less full time. By the time she passed away in 1986, she actually had two houses in the area. One was down the road in the tiny little town of Abiquiu, New Mexico. I was actually just there 10 days, 2 weeks ago. And the other is 15 miles north on Ghost Ranch proper. So backing up just a tiny bit, this is Rio Arriba County. The county seat up there is a town called Tierra Amarilla. In the 2000 census, Tierra Amarilla, the county seat, had a total of 750 residents.
All
I've
right.
driven through this town. There is not a lot going on. The county Rio Arriba County is 5,900 square miles and has just over 40,000 residents. By comparison, Bear County, where I live, where San Antonio is, Bear County is one fifth that size. It's about 1,200 square miles and has 2 million people. So 50 times more people in one fifth the space. So if you're in Arriba County, you're in the middle of absolute nowhere. Ghost Ranch itself is right around 27,000 acres. And I'm not even going to try to get into the full backstory and history of sort of where it came from and et cetera. But when O'Keefe first came to the ranch in the 20s, it was a working ranch in every respect. Also had guest houses, and basically wealthy folks from the East Coast and the West Coast would travel out to the area and basically pretend to rough it, pretend to be ranchers for a few days. It is incredibly picturesque there. There are a number of movie sets that still just, when movie sets were built and used, they've just stayed up. Most recently, if you saw Oppenheimer, the set that was the makeshift 1940s Los Alamos is actually a set that was built on Ghost Ranch. And they now maintain it and do tours of it. During the days of the Manhattan Project, many of the scientists who worked on it, including Oppenheimer, actually did visit Ghost Ranch during the 1940s.
I haven't seen that
So-
yet. I don't like comedies, so
It's a laugh riot. It's heavy. It's really good though. I've been going to this part of the world for literally my entire life. I've probably been up there 30 or 40 times. And it is sort of mythical and mystical in a weird but in my mind unmistakable way. There are many pueblos in the area and reservations in the area. Historically very heavily Apache and Navajo, many long forgotten Catholic churches, but also a few very, very active communities of faith, including a Muslim mosque and actually a monastery that just sits out by itself in the desert. It's incredibly picturesque, but in much the same way that a really pretty cathedral or Stonehenge, or I would almost imagine Easter Island, it kind of has that that really kind of eerie feel about it as well. And I think Morris has been there, and I think Morris can sort of attest to that sort of aspect of it. But now we get more into the folklore portion of it. If you were born in Rio Arriba County, it might not matter if your birth had been at the first part of the 15th century or the first part of the 20th century. If you're of modest means, it's likely you didn't get much, if any, education, and your primary function was merely staying alive. It's known that people lived along the Chama River in this area for at least 5,000 years. So it's been a lifeblood for a long period of time, but the landscape probably has not changed really at all. Ranching has been present for a long time, and so has cattle rustling. At the tail end of the 19th century, this is Wild West times, there were two brothers who lived in the area, the Archuleta boys. And these two gentlemen were not really big fans of making an honest living. They were essentially, at least initially, just cattle rustlers. They would happily pilfer off cows as cowboys were coming through the area and driving their cattle north or south, depending on time of year. And it was in this period of time that the land was known as Ranchos de los Brujos, or the Ranch of the Witches. So, Archuleta boys are here trying to make a living, and they realize that they can instill fear about where they're hiding their cattle by making it sort of a mystery, making it feel unsafe, and to locals who are very happy to adopt this storyline quickly. It winds up being a very convenient cover story for them. There are bad things happening here. There are beasts here. There's wailing here. If you drive a horse through this area at a certain time of night, it's not safe. And so people just happily steer clear. And the Archuleta boys think, yes, this is a great cover.
Here be dragons,
Right,
as they
exactly.
might say on the old maps. Yeah. Okay.
So so the place is obviously it must be haunted by witches, and the Archuleta boys do whatever they can to basically instill this fear, but their greed starts to get the better of them, and they become more and more aggressive. They start stealing more cattle. Over time, a few of the cowboys also start vanishing, because you can kill a cowboy and steal all of his stuff, and you can take his horse and any nice things that he might have as well. And so they start getting a little more aggressive, and the rumors start to abound more and more. As the story goes, one of the brothers claims he found some gold, but he refuses to tell the other brother where it was. The brothers allegedly fight, and one brother kills the other, but doesn't first find out where the gold is, which is sort of critical to that threat. Um,
Yeah.
but he's now killed his brother, but he's enraged. He doesn't know where this alleged gold is. Now threatens the widow about where the gold is. She doesn't know where it is. Threatens the children as
Shit.
well. She manages to get away. Again, no way of really knowing how true this story is at all. But she manages to get away and she runs off, quote, back into town. I presume that must mean back into where present day Abiquiu is today. And she gathers folks up, and the town gathers and goes after the remaining Archuleta brother. So Senor Archuleta very quickly meets his end with his neck in a noose swinging from a cottonwood tree. And allegedly that cottonwood tree still stands on Ghost Ranch
Mm.
to this day. I don't know. I'm not sure how old cottonwoods live for, but it's allegedly still there. In 1936, the property is bought by a man named Arthur Newton Pack, and that's when he changes the name to Ghost Ranch. It's still a working ranch, but he also turns it into a retreat and educational center. And then the whole place, all 27,000 acres, is donated to the Presbyterian Church in 1955, and that church still owns it to this day. So my siblings and my parents started going to the ranch in the 1960s when they lived in the area, and I started going when I was a kid in the 70s. It's picturesque, but it's definitely spooky. We always camped, and lots of stories are told around campfires. We have sort of lost the hearth, and so the hearth is the source in my mind of a lot of folklore.
Hmm.
And I always loved going there as a kid because it was the one spot on earth where I was allowed to be completely feral. We would show up,
Hmm.
set up camp, and every day wake up. We had a little crappy Coleman stove, and would make shift. I mean, scramble eggs and lots of cold cereal. I would inhale whatever I needed, and then at the age of 7 or 8, I would just run and have free reign of wherever. I mean, we did all kinds of stupid things when I was under the age of 10. They were probably not very safe, but it certainly was a good time. Uh, and seemingly for many years in a row, we would arrive at the ranch at the same time as this kid named Ben and his family. We didn't really coordinate these visits; it just always seemed to be the case that we would show up the same time Ben's family was there. As I recall, Ben was from Oklahoma, and he could be easily found in the campground because they had, at least in my mind, the biggest and most badass Airstream I had ever seen. It was comfortably slept a family of 10. And we would hike and swim and slide down hills and just be completely filthy every single day.
Hmm.
One day, just after breakfast, I saw him running by, and so he was off in a big rush to go somewhere. And so I kind of joined him as he was running and was asking him, what are you doing? Where are you going? And full disclosure, this is a story that has lived in my head for 45 years. And again, as with
Hmm.
most folklore, hard to know how much of this is accurate or probably true, but there you have it. So Ben says he wants to go check to see if Cusco has been fishing. Okay, I don't know what that means, but I'll play along. I kept running alongside him, and we keep running up north across Ghost Ranch up toward that box canyon where the Archuleta boys kept their rustled cattle. So Morris, when you and I were there 4 years ago, you'll
Hmm.
remember those various plaques on stones
Yep.
commemorating various
Yeah.
people. So there are plaques now for both my parents up in that area.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So that trail is the trail that goes right past. Or I'm going to talk about a pond that's there here in a moment, and that trail goes right up into Box Canyon, but then also it's also part of the Continental Divide Trail. So
And
that's
that's also the trail where I figured out that I'm old and out of shape,
yeah, yeah.
if I recall correctly.
Hiking at elevation. Yeah, it was exhausting. So I'm running alongside him up that same trail, 45 years ago. And there is this reservoir that's on this trail as well. In that box canyon, there is a spring. That spring has been there for, I don't know, 500 years, 1,000 years, 10,000 years, I don't know, forever. But when you're in this high desert setting, it's a little bit peculiar to come across what appears to be a water hazard on a golf course because there's just a little patch of green sitting in what is otherwise a completely barren landscape. The ranch to this day uses that spring and that pond to, water horses, water their alfalfa field, and it is the lone patch of green. Sometimes when it's incredibly dry. Morris, when you and I were there, it was bone dry. It hadn't rained at
Right.
all. They've had 2 or 3
Mm.
monsoons this year. The place was, I felt like I was in the Amazon, and I was just
It's
there 2 weeks ago.
verdant.
It was, flowers everywhere, and cactus. It was the exact opposite. So he and I hoofed up this trail. Pond is on our right. In order to get to the pond, we have to take a little right turn down this extra little short 50-foot trail to get to the water's edge for this pond. Ben is immediately incredibly excited because he sees next to the pond a little pile of pasoli kernels. So he's pumped up because this means that Cusco has been fishing. I again like, what the hell? I still don't know what you're talking about. He said, well, that means Pasoli, the signs of the Pasoli was here. That means that Cusco was fishing here either last night or sometime super early this morning. I was trying to figure out what would be swimming in this dank, completely bottomless pool. And so then I asked him, who's Cusco? And then Ben said, well, Cusco is a ghost. I'm sorry, what? I think was probably my reaction. So over time, it's later explained to me that Cusco was a man somewhere between the ages of 50 and 300. He may have been Mexican or he may have been Navajo or Apache. He was definitely fairly short. He rarely spoke to anyone, but he started coming to the ranch in the years just after George O'Keeffe had arrived. The story goes that he always arrived on foot, and he always had a mule with him who walked right behind him. He would arrive in the spring every year in March or April to get to the slightly cooler elevations prior to summer. And every year he would spend a day or two with O'Keeffe at her home. Her home is all kind of on the southwest side of the property because somehow they had become friends over time. At some point, then he would start walking north. He would drop his mule at the corrals to be watered and to be tended to by the cowboys. And then he would just keep walking north and vanish above the pond to camp and fish and just spend time in the forest. It was alleged he would wander down occasionally during the summer, always being careful never to speak to adults. But he always had a knife and some bits of wood with him. And he only ever spoke to children. So visitors there, children of folks that work there. He'd pull the knife out, and he could definitely carve a little wooden doll for any child who wanted a doll.
Hmm.
And he was always barefoot and always had a straw hat on. And when he dropped his mule off at the corrals, the mule always had a bell around its neck, a tiny little bell. He'd grab the bell and he'd wear the bell around his neck as well. So this is apparently Cusco's life. Apparently, as it was told to me, a real person who lived and kind of existed around the ranch for a period of time, fishing and camping at Ghost Ranch in the summer and early fall, and then he'd vanish back south at some point, and it would repeat. So Ben's father seemed to love this story and kind of knew all the details. One summer, Ben and I found the remnants of a small campfire in a place where there kind of shouldn't have been a campfire. We thought, Cusco. We found footprints, bare footprints in mud. Was he here? A makeshift fishing rod. On several occasions, we found Pasoli next to the pond, and seemed to be clear signs that Cusco or someone had been fishing. One night by a fire, Ben's father explained that one year Cusco dropped his mule off at the corrals and walked north into the forest, but never came back. The ranch hands kept tending to Cusco's mule, but the mule was getting old. Finally, they decided to let the mule just run free and have run of the ranch and be wherever he wanted, but always had access to food and water if he wanted it. But within days of being let out, the mule was seen wandering north up that same trail, wandering past the pond up to higher elevations, and was never spotted again. I, of course, never really believed there was a ghost, but every year more and more detail of the story seemed to come out, and I just thought it was more and more interesting to get this sort of further, like what's I don't really think there's a ghost, but how much of this story is true? At about the age of 12 or 13, I think, having now heard this story since I was 6 or 7, Ben and I and two or three others decided to hike all the way up to the back end of this box canyon. And it's pretty slushy up there because that's where the spring's coming from. So you're kind of walking in this little, not really creek bed, but it's definitely wet and slippery. And it's lots of bare rocks. So there's kind of boulders and things that have fallen into the canyon as well. But it's incredibly picturesque and angular with lots of weird shadows and trees growing in the canyon. And it's peculiar, at least in my mind, to be walking on a trail that has been used for 100 years or 1,000 years. It's just been there forever. And there's something about that just feels very spiritual to me. At the end of Box Canyon, we were yelling and playing around, just being kids and being, idiot 12-year-olds and enjoying the echo. And we're about, ready to turn around and leave. And suddenly Ben and I hear a bell. And then we're convinced we hear someone humming or singing to themselves. Cusco. I turn and start running down the canyon. But it's rough and it's tumble and it's wet and it's full of boulders and you can't really go quickly. You can't really sprint. You can just go as fast as you can without breaking your neck. The others are right behind us, wondering what the hell just happened because they don't really know the story of Cusco. But Ben and Bryan they just freaked out and started running. So we're running too. So all five of us are sprinting down this canyon. I'm 12 or 13, long, lean, can run like the wind. Ben's right behind me. And we're halfway down the canyon. The bell stops and the humming stops. But I saw him. I know that I saw him. I know that I saw a head and shoulders and a straw hat of a man about my height when I was 12, moving quickly away from me. Ben saw him too, but we never caught up to him. I've spent a ton of time at Ghost Ranch. It's definitely part of my DNA. On a number of occasions when I've been there, I have asked people that have longer histories than I do with the ranch about the tale of is Cusco, or at one point I thought it was maybe Cisco, but I've asked lots of people about this story. No one knows anything about it. They always look at me, they give me a completely blank stare. Like I've heard tons of ghost stories about this place. That one I have no idea what are you talking about. I just love this legend, but in retrospect, I've convinced myself now that I think it was just Ben's father fucking with us. I think he probably just wanted to make this whole thing up, and was having fun with it. Again, impossible to know where the truth lies on this. Maybe it's all in our heads because we were little kids and we heard this legend and we wanted to believe it, and so we did. Mm-hmm. When I was in my mid-30s, I went back to the ranch, and I actually was there as a long-term volunteer. So I was there for 4 or 5 months. And the story when I was there as a volunteer was that an elderly man who lived in Abiquiu had passed away. And when he died, he had left behind an old horse, a horse named Lady, who was supposedly 40 years old. I didn't think horses got that old, but I was told she was at least 40.
They can, yeah.
They can, okay.
Yeah.
And again, as with Cusco's mule, she was basically given access to food and water, but she could just wander because she didn't run. She kind of moseyed and was docile and completely friendly, but she went where she pleased. My friend Gary, who was on the staff at the time, we're walking past one day and he went, "Oh, wait, watch this." And he reached over. The ranch had a very, very small orchard of apple trees. He plucked an apple off a tree and bit into the skin so Lady could smell it. She had a terrible sense of smell because she was so old. Offered Lady the apple, and she, of course, inhaled it. These trees produced incredibly very, very few fruit, and they were like the size of golf balls, so the weirdest apples I've ever seen, and really, really kind of bitter and tart, but the horse loved them. So whenever I was in town, I would buy like a 2 pound, 3 pound bag, whatever the cheapest apple was, because I thought this was funny that the horse would wander over to you if you had apples. So virtually every morning for my first month there, lady knew I had apples because every single morning when I'd walk by, she knew I had an apple in my pocket, and I'd walk by, give her the apple, and she would stand there and chew on it. And then if you scratched her really hard and really slowly, right on her nose, she would sort of close her eyes and drift off to one side like she was going to fall down into a trance. But after a period of time, she recognized me and would basically come to me like a Labrador. It was sort of ridiculous. And but she always stayed right near the sort of main admin building for the ranch. So when people would come in, they'd get out of the car and they'd immediately see this sweet, docile horse and want to take pictures. On many, many occasions, I managed to ruin photographs of people visiting there because she'd pose and be nice and docile until she saw me, and then she'd walk out of the photo. There was one occasion when a woman came to the ranch with, I believe, three daughters. They were like 7, 10, and 13 approximately, and then an older gentleman who I presumed was the girl's grandfather. They were carefully posing with their family for a family photo. And then I happened to come up over their eyes, and unfortunately, lady was facing me. And again, lady walked out of their perfectly posed photo, and they were irritated. They were staying there for several days, and I managed to ruin 2 or 3 photos for them, as I recall. And they then watched this horse kind of wander over to me, and they witnessed the horse seemingly loving me, right? One afternoon, I tried to go over to this woman and apologize to her for ruining her photos and explaining to her what was going on. But she behaved like I had the plague or something. She actively avoided me. I kind of caught her in one building, and she quickly found an exit, and she wanted no part of me. And I couldn't understand it. I thought it was weird, but sort of funny. I went back to Gary on the staff and told him about it and was trying to figure out what the hell was going on. And that's when Gary said, "Oh, yeah, that's probably my fault." I'm like, okay, Gary, what did you do? What did you do? He went on to explain that the woman had come into the office at one point earlier in the day and asked about the tall man with the black coat who's walking past outside right now. Who is that guy? Pointing at me. And Gary said to her, "Oh, you shouldn't talk to him." So she was scared of me for some reason. So this poor family who lives in Topeka or Tallahassee or wherever the hell they're from, I imagine they're now telling the tale of the horse whisperer of Ghost Ranch, namely me. So that was my contribution to the folklore of Ghost Ranch. I have no idea if there's any stories being told about me, but I thought it was funny.
It's pretty good. The only way it could have been better is if he'd looked out there and said, "What man?"
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't see any man out there in a black coat.
That's what I thought was going to happen.
Right. He doesn't exist. So anyway, some folklore from New Mexico that seemed like it was in your wheelhouse.
Well, that's crazy that no one else had heard that story about Cusco. That's really interesting.
Yeah, I'm pretty well convinced that this kid Ben's father was just trying to instill a love of Ghost Ranch in his son. Because I mean, my parents didn't really do that in terms of creating some completely mythical story about it. But I think it was just a mechanism to get buy-in from the kid. But
Yeah.
so it's funny to me that I know I have memories that are in my skull that must not have happened. But
Well,
nevertheless, they're in there.
What you said about the dad, I mean, it wouldn't take much to what did they find by what was the proof? What's a Pasoli? I don't know what that is. What is that?
But Pasoli
It's hominy, right?
it's hominy. It's
Oh, okay,
it's a type of corn basically. So it's in soups and things. And apparently you can. I mean, I've used in fishing in Texas. I've used corn as bait for fishing. And apparently up there, because it's much more common, it's really so you can bait a hook and things will go for it. And so people apparently do fish with Pasoli. And so in my mind, this, Ben's father ran up there at 4 a.m. with a handful of pozole and dropped it by the pond and ran back just in order to, I don't know.
And he could put,
Oh,
it wouldn't take a lot for him to put his bare foot in some mud, to have
right.
a straw
It'd be
hat.
so
I mean,
simple to do that, just to completely freak your kid out, but freak them out in a good way.
and
Hmm.
voila, you're in a Scooby-Doo episode. Uh,
Yes. Well, I thought of Quantum Leap because Ben's dad said only children could see Cusco. And I don't know if you remember in Quantum
mhm.
Leap, only
Yep.
children could see him in his true form.
Children
Oh,
and
that's
animals.
right.
Yeah. Children and animals. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
That's
I'd
right.
forgotten that.
Uh-huh.
God. Yeah. Morris, you loved that show, as I recall, didn't you?
Well, yes, it's a whole chapter in my dissertation. Yes, it is. Yeah, that is correct.
No way.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, actually, it is. Um,
What is
I, I'm intrigued by the idea of walking into the north because when you said he would walk north, because in a lot of, as I understand it, and Vanessa, correct me, but going into the west is often a metaphor, particularly in American culture, for death.
Right.
Right? We walk into the West, and it
Mhm.
was I can't think of her name, but she wrote a book called West of Everything, and it's all about analyzing the Western film. And she said to go west is to go further than death, to go beyond death. And her example is,
Hmm.
all the kings of ancient Egypt are buried on the west bank of the river because that's the Valley of the Dead. So
Uh,
yeah, I wonder what going into the north. I mean that's just if it was just convenient, or if that's the lay of the land, or
I
this
mean,
idea of
out there, it's just the
The
lay of the
natural
land. So,
migration.
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. Oh,
that
that's
The
true.
too.
Yeah,
Right.
natural
yeah.
migration of
Right.
the
Right.
typical
Right.
animal.
Right. And the north-south migration, I hadn't thought about that. Yeah. Tolkien uses it in Lord of the Rings. So we see
Yeah.
they go into the Westlands, the
Yeah.
Greylands, the Westlands, that kind of stuff. So going into the north would be reflective of that, I guess, that the circular path of migration, which humans used to do too. So
Yep.
that makes a lot of sense.
Hmm. Well, and ghost stories are the gateway drug to folklore. That's what that's what
I
folklorists like
know.
to say. It's how
The
people
first
get
one's
hooked
free.
into the world. Yeah.
Well, I think the very first story I did for the podcast was on Babyhead Road.
Yeah.
Wasn't it,
Yeah.
Brian? I
Yeah.
think it was. Yeah, the Legend of Babyhead Road. Um, uh, but there's just this idea that just beyond what we know outside that liminal space is the other side, and it takes passing through a doorway or passing through an arch or a canyon to get to that point.
Hmm.
Cool
Right.
Hmm.
stuff. And you're convinced you saw this. You're convinced you saw a straw hat, and to this day, you're
Right. So either we wanted to see it, we made it up, but he saw it as well, or again, his dad knew that we were going to be up there and found a hat and then sprinted up there just to fuck with us. I guess,
Hmm. Hmm.
or it was
Very
complete,
possible.
or it was completely innocent, and there was someone else who was hiking through there who was Latino or of native descent who happened to be wearing I mean, it could have been completely innocent, and we filled in the blank, right? I mean, oh, that must be who that is. It couldn't be a human being. It must be a ghost. So, I mean, there's no way to know at this point. But I mean, I have goosebumps just talking about it because it feels so real to me.
Hmm.
So
that
bizarre. I mean,
that is amazing to me because you are a skeptic at heart.
right. Yeah, I'm not a religious person, but there are some things that are right on the fringes there, like, huh, that's interesting. Wonder what happened there. So I don't
Yeah.
know.
Right, because you don't uh, you don't, I don't want to say fall for that, but you don't ascribe to that particular worldview
No,
very
absolutely not.
often.
Right, right.
So
No.
that's the
Hmm.
biggest surprise of
Hmm.
the story to me is that you yeah, Brian, I just who's oh, have you ever thought that maybe the father and son were in on it to mess with you?
Oh, okay. That's just a spectacular amount of effort if that's the true story.
But
Every
that is an Oklahoma thing to do, to mess with a Texas kid. That is a very Oklahoma thing to
let's
do.
try let's figure out how when he's going to be there next summer and we'll screw with him some more. I'm like, yeah, okay.
Vanessa, I have a question. Do you when you do your stories, do you
Hmm.
did you start focusing on Texas? Because I will admit I've not listened to your podcast yet, but What was it that got you started in this that made you want to look at these ways of finding truth, I guess, if you will?
So it really started because I started writing a book series, and I wanted it to center on folk tales. And so I thought it would be a cool idea to have a podcast where I was basically doing the research for the books. Sorry,
Ah,
that's my dog coughing in the background. And then also the podcast would end up being the marketing branch for
gotcha.
the book series. And so I wasn't just focusing on Texas, although I did reach out. I had several guests from Texas, and I probably had more guests from Texas than anywhere else. But I have had guests from all over the world. I've had
Hmm.
two from India. Um, I had someone from I can't remember Ukraine. I don't know.
Oh.
It was a Slavic
Hmm.
country. But all over, I've had guests come on and talk about different elements of folklore. I had a guest, I believe his name was Thompson. I'm blanking on his last name, but it was 2 years ago, and he spoke specifically about ghost stories all around the world. And he does a freshman lecture class all about the differences between folklore in different cultures. And there's different ideas about what a ghost is. In some Asian countries, ghosts are actually corporeal. So they actually have, you can touch them, you can have relations with them, you can have children with them and have ghost babies. So, ghosts, the idea of ghosts are different in different places, but they are always of another world,
Hmm.
regardless if they are, someone in a white sheet, or or they're see-through, or they have physicality.
Hmm.
Yeah, and we tend to I guess we tend to put them into one or two camps in our culture, and that's a loved one trying to get in touch with us, send us a sign,
Yes,
or
that's the most common.
yeah, or or trying to do us harm. And it is, I don't know, I remember that when my grandfather died, my mother had dreams of him coming to her window, and she would go out and
Hmm.
search beneath her window for his boot prints because she thought he would be out there trying to tell her
Mm.
something from wherever it is he is now. Um,
Hmm.
but it is interesting how the ghost plays different roles in different places. Like I believe it's the Navajo culture. You immediately shudder after someone dies. You shudder their home they lived in, the hut they lived in. You shutter it and perhaps destroy it because you don't want the ghost spirit hanging around there as though they still
Hmm.
belong. Which it's
Mm.
just fascinating. How
Hmm.
there's little differences here and there, but it means something all around the world, doesn't it? This idea of the ghost.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And I'm not an expert in any specific culture, but I feel like in Ireland, it's more common to hear stories. I mean, there are definitely going to be ghost stories as well, but
Hmm.
when you hear about fairies, those are the ones who are on the other side, and they
Hmm.
will. Um, there seem to be more of those stories over there, because they'll capture people. Like if you
Right.
cross into their world and you eat of their food, you were trapped in their world.
Oh wow.
Right. Right. Well, Shakespeare does that in Midsummer Night's Dream, right? I mean, that's the
Oh.
crossing of the fairy world and the human world. And you have the wee folk and the
Hmm.
hinter folk, and I believe the a lot of the who is it has the fair folk? Is that the like the Scandinavian countries? Or is that England?
I mean,
I'm
there's
thinking
different
England and
names.
Ireland.
There's different names, but I think they'll call them Fey folk as well.
Hmm.
And uh, they have lots of different names in lots of different regions.
Yeah, and I you get a sense that sometimes the ghost stories are told to you to get you to behave in a certain way that you don't mess with a fairy ring you
Yes,
find in a forest. Um, and
right.
more often than not, there's a reason behind you doing that, right? Or are you not doing that because it disturbs some kind of ecological aspect of the area, which is also, or in the case
Yeah.
of like the brothers, the Archetta brothers, manipulating the surroundings to prevent people from going there for their own reasons, which is, another story altogether.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome stuff.
Yeah, the story that we did on my podcast most recently, one of the things I do on my podcast is called Fairy Tale Flip, and I have a co-host, and we dissect a fairy tale. Last month, this month we did a folk tale. It might be in the realm of mythology, but it's an Aboriginal story, and the whole idea of it was the
Oh,
Yaramayahu, and it's this creature that lives in the canopies of fig trees. And if you go out wandering on your own, this is a story that is told to children to keep them from wandering off
Right.
into
Right.
the bush.
mhm.
The Yarmaha Yahoo is vampiric, and it doesn't suck your blood with its teeth. It doesn't have teeth. It has suckers on its hands and its feet, and it drains your blood, and then it opens its mouth like a snake, how it unhinges its jaws, and it actually sucks you down and then spews you out while you're still alive. And then if it happens multiple times, you actually turn into the Yaramayahu. But the entire
Yarma Yahoo.
purpose of the story, yeah, the whole entire purpose of the story is to keep children from wanting to wander off alone, because
Scare the
Sure.
crap
everything
out
in
of
Australia
children.
is trying to kill you.
Yeah,
Right.
why shouldn't the go? I need to ask my wife. My wife is an Aussie, so I'll need to ask her if she heard of that when she was a kid. Stay
It's
around the
it's an
house and
Aboriginal tale.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you have Paramount Fay in the south, you have the Loup Garou in the south. Where else? Oh, we have in South Texas we
La
have
Llorona.
La Llorona, right? Um, to keep you away from the places where here be dragons, that bad stuff happens. Stay away
Right.
from that. But that's
Yeah.
a human thing, right? To demarcate what is ours and what is not ours. I mean, that's how we make sense of the world. So it would follow, I guess,
Hmm.
that we have this in our stories as well. Yama Yahoo, I gotta ask. It's like when I went to Hawaii and when I was like 6, my dad had a medical meeting. And so I went, and of course she had a friend there and they had kids who were just older than me. So they tormented me every day with stories of the Minahuni, the little people of the island who, um, and I remember the boy said, yeah, they like to cut your ears off at night. And it's, so I'm like, oh my God, can you believe what they're saying to me? Shut up and have another Mai
It's
Tai,
just
kid.
sadistic.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh my God, I didn't want to go out. I didn't want to, I'm not gonna,
Hawaii sucks.
yeah,
Let's go home.
exactly.
You know, I struggle with this for myself because I can't imagine telling my children about the La Llorona, but I understand, but it's told. I mean, it's still a widely told tale to children
Mhm.
of South Texas and of Mexico. Um, because I know my children will end up sleeping in my bed for months and months and months, because they are frightened beyond anything. My oldest downloaded a ghost tracking app on his phone. It was obviously like, not
Yeah.
real, but he put it on the phone, and it's not actually a phone that he can use, but we just used it as a tablet. But he put it in the kid's room, and they detected a ghost, and oh my gosh, the trauma that happened from this fake ghost tracking app is still happening. Months past.
Man, that is something
So
else.
I struggle with it because I understand the reasoning for wanting to tell your children, and it's good for them to like have these like balancing of fear of reality and what's not true, but at the, at the same time, there's a lot of trauma that
Hmm.
occurs with these stories, I think.
And it's hard because it's fun to be scared. I mean, it's
Right. Right.
it's
It
it's
is
why
fun to be
we go to
scared.
haunted
Yeah.
houses. It's why we
Right. Scary movies. Right.
Halloween is my favorite holiday of the year, and there's a lot of reasons for that. Um, yeah, good stuff. Yeah,
That's
awesome,
awesome.
awesome stories, Brian. I'm surprised that you've been able to hold on to these this long, given how long I've known you, that you held on to those 2 stories. That is
Yeah.
Then
How
bonkers.
long have y'all been doing this podcast?
coming up on 4 years.
Yeah, and we've known each other since we were in high school, so that's 35 years, and he's never told me this story. So,
That
um,
he's just held on to
he's he,
it.
Yeah, one day we'll do
One
this.
day. Well, I mean, because so 6 months ago or a year ago, I was telling Morris, because we typically most episodes we do one story each and don't tell the other what's coming. But I told him, well, Med Vanessa, folklore. If you have something that's a folklore type story, let me know and we'll tag team them and then have you on for that. But he kept not having a folklore story, so we had to do it like this.
Well, I think I ran out.
Yeah, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah,
So
I did
we're
baby.
doing a
How can you run out
little.
of folklore stories? I feel like they're endless.
Yeah, they are, but I only
Well, it
have
just
so
requires
much.
work and research and figuring out
Yeah,
how to present it. Then,
and I only have so much uh neurons left at this point in my life, but
Mm,
it is
I
interesting that
know it. I know it.
the first story I did was Babyhead Road, which was something I grew up with. Just this there's a section of
Mm,
the road you didn't want to go down late at night if it's raining because you're going to see stuff that you don't want to see. It's the other side leaking
hmm
through.
right.
So,
The other story that I did a couple years ago was the Legend of the Red Ghost. Is that the story of the camel?
oh,
Remember that
that's
one?
great. Yeah,
Yeah,
that I
yeah.
remember that one. Yeah.
So that's another, it's right in this vein as well. So we've done a few folklore-ish stories, but
Well, and then I did do the two-parter on urban legends too,
right,
because
yeah,
I
yeah.
think
We've done a few of
it
those.
fits into the because those are we discuss those as cautionary tales as well,
Yeah, kind of.
hmm
particularly of a sexual element when it comes to like AIDS Mary and organ harvesting and all those other lovely things that urban legends taught us about. Um,
The
I was at
Halloween candy.
the Halloween
So
candy.
yeah, right.
I
Yeah,
was at Utah when
razor
Jan
blades in the
Harold.
apples. Yeah,
I was at Utah when Jan Harold Brunvand was there, and I didn't get a chance to take a class with him. But he's the guy that wrote all the urban legend books in the '70s and '80s, books which have remained near and dear to my heart. Um, Choking Doberman, stuff like that. So, good stuff. Good stuff.
so it's the Fabric of Folklore podcast. You're on YouTube. You're on
Yes.
all the platforms.
Yes.
Is there a website as well?
There is a website, but it's currently down because it got
Okay.
hacked.
Oh,
Everything's getting
fun.
hacked. So I'm having to have it rebuilt. And it's been several months that it's been down, which is very
Mhm.
frustrating. But these things just take time, and I'm a
Right, right.
Yeah. Oh,
solo
yeah.
solopreneur, so
Right, right.
it's slow going.
So
Yeah, I understand.
we've been speaking of ghosts, and we do have Halloween coming up. Do you have anything big planned for Halloween this year? Do you have a Halloween episode or?
I don't have one planned. Well, so I've been holding up back on doing as many interviews this year. I think
Mhm.
I stopped doing interviews in about April just because I wanted to actually finish a book because I started this podcast in order to,
Right. Mhm.
research and
Support the
promote
book.
a book. And then the podcast was taking up so much time. I was not spending any time on writing and completing any projects. So
Mhm.
I stopped doing the interviews. I'm mostly just doing fairy tale flip at the moment, but I plan to go
Cool.
back into the interview process. But the episode that we're going to do for October is a Japanese tale of a spider hybrid woman. And the Japanese, their ghost stories are
They are.
creepy.
Yeah.
Way out there.
There's something wrong with their brains.
Well,
Man, they can
it,
they can
it,
scare you.
it spawned a whole new genre of horror films for American
Mm,
audiences to explore. I mean, it really is an
yeah.
astonishing level of storytelling that when they did The Ring and The Grudge and all that other stuff, people are like, "What is this? My God, this is." It's like the first time you see Wicker Man, the original Wicker Man with.
Oh,
That's a
wow.
great movie.
I've not
Wicker
seen that in
Man's a
forever.
great
Yeah,
I've
no,
movie.
never
it's
seen
good.
it.
It's good. It's what
It,
midnight? Wicker Man is what year?
1972,
Is
1972,
that old?
71 or
Shoot. Okay.
72. Yeah, yeah,
All
yeah.
right.
It's all based in this idea of the circle of time and how we tell each other these stories and what do they mean and yeah, if you haven't seen Wicker Man, folks, anybody out there, the first one, not the remake with Nicolas Cage, the first one with Edward
Oh,
Woodward and Christopher Lee. I can't remember. Yeah,
Hmm.
it's good stuff. Good stuff.
okay. I'll have to look it up.
Yeah, good Halloween movie. Yeah. Yep.
And listeners, please look up Vanessa's stuff and download her podcast
Absolutely.
and listen. It's good stuff. And Vanessa, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. That was a ton of fun.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm
Well,
checking
and
out your
I
podcast
always
tonight.
I always like to warn my listeners that it's a very nerdy podcast, but I think we're in good company. So
Yes.
I think your listeners will
How
like my
dare you?
podcast.
Yes, I did a story about comic book art heists. So yes, it does get into that realm. So
I
cool.
interview a lot of professors.
Oh yeah, well, yeah,
He is one or was one.
yeah, technically, yeah, that's right
So
in my
you
wheelhouse.
understand.
So absolutely,
You understand.
yeah.
Professors like to talk and they like to tell their stories, and so yes,
And
it's they're good interviewees.
well, we also like to learn things that we didn't know because
Yeah.
it's when you find something you're like, I've never heard of this before. You're like, wow, that is astonishing that it's like when you find an album that everybody's been listening to and you just now discovered it and the album's like 20 years old. It's like, why have I not heard of this album before? Anyway,
Yeah.
I always come back to pop culture in the end. So well, thank you. Thanks everybody for listening. Thanks to Vanessa for coming on as our guest genius. Thanks to everybody out there. Brian, do we have anything else we need to say except for our usual take care of yourselves and take care
Thanks
of
for
each
listening.
other?
Check out Dream Idiots and hanging in there with us every week. We appreciate it, and we'll be back.
Sounds good. Bye.
Bye.